tonight as we hear about some of the actual stories of those faithful in Nauvoo, Nauvoo saints who were forced to leave Nauvoo in the bitter winter cold, began the exodus on this very road, which is Parley Street.
Welcome. This is Parley Street. It has come to be known as the Trail of Hope. I think you'll see why in a short while. It was here that the saints departed their city beautiful, a city they had built from a swamp, a city where thousands had gathered from across the United States and the British Isles, a place where they had united in a singular devotion to build a house of God and live worthy to enter it. It was a city where the saints laughed and played and worshipped, a place they called home. Yes, they left much behind, but they took with them their testimonies of the Lord Jesus Christ and their knowledge that he had restored his gospel once again upon the earth. Now, as you walk down Parley Street today, I'd like to paint a picture for you to ponder. A picture of a family walking alongside a wagon, snow swirling around them. A little girl shivers next to her mother and cries, "Mama, I'm cold. Why can't we go home?" Many would view this picture as a scene of sorrow, suffering, and loss. But let me finish the story. The mother scoops up her daughter into her arms and smiles. "We are going home," she says. "God is leading us to a new home." Can you see that little family facing an icy river unafraid? Can you feel them moving forward with hope, strengthened by their love for the Lord and their faith that he is watching over them and leading them through his prophet? As you walk down Parley Street this evening, we hope to share some of the stories and thoughts and feelings of those who walked down this very street and headed west over 175 years ago. When you get to the end, it's only a short distance down to the river. We hope you'll sit and ponder the things you've heard and read. And may their stories give you courage on your own trails of hope. Because these are the words of those who actually lived in Nauvoo, we invite you to refrain from applauding and instead contemplate the things you received today. The fall of 1845 found the city of Nauvoo one vast workshop, for nearly every family was wagon building. Our parlor became a shop in which to paint wagons, and likewise, every parlor in the neighborhood was put to some such use for general preparation for the winter exodus.
The committee appointed to acquire information in regard to the outfitting of families for the immigration west submitted the following report. Each family consisting of 5 adults will require 1 good strong wagon, well covered, 3 yokes of oxen between the ages of 4 and 10,
2 or more cows,
1,000 pounds of flour,
and good sacks to put it in, 100 pounds of sugar, 25 pounds of salt,
1 good musket or rifle to each man, and from 25 to 100 pounds of farming or other tools,
clothing and bedding not to exceed 500 pounds.
Oh, and from 10 to 50 pounds of seed to a family.
Cooking utensils as few will do.
And 2 pounds of black pepper. It seems like a lot, but we know the journey will require some 4 to 5 months, being upwards of 2,000 miles.
On the 9th of February, my husband took me, our boy of 3.5 years, and our little girl of 1.5 years, as we crossed the Mississippi River on the ice. We turned our faces towards the wilderness in which we were to seek out an abiding place.
We left a comfortable home, the accumulation of 4 years of thrift and labor, and took away with us only a few much-needed articles, leaving everything else behind.
My last act in that precious spot was to tidy the rooms, sweep up the floor, and set the broom in its accustomed place behind the door. Then, with emotions in my heart which I could not now pen, and which I then strove with success to conceal, I gently closed the door and faced an unknown future. But I faced it with faith in God. So I stepped onto the wagon with a certain degree of serenity. Bathsheba
And George A.
Smith.
My parents had died in Nauvoo in 1842, before I was yet 10 years old, leaving me and my siblings to be cared for by a court-appointed guardian. When the Saints began leaving Nauvoo in February of 1846, my sister and her husband gave me to understand that if I wished to go west, they would provide for me. Oh, how I wanted to go. But the rest of my family and my guardian were opposed. Consequently, I was compelled to leave home secretly, disguised as a girl to hide my identity. Side combs covered my hair and false curls covered my head, along with a sunbonnet. Along with 4 or 5 other girls, I crossed the Des Moines River on a flatboat, the boatman being none the wiser. And getting along the other side of the river, I met up with an old friend on horseback, and he took me on behind him. Some of you may know that when girls ride, they're supposed to ride sideways, especially where there are a great many deal of people to observe them. I too took that precaution. In going along the road, and because I was trying to hide my face, some people would sometimes yell out, "Old man, that girl will fall! She's asleep!" He just turned around and said, "Marianne, wake up. You'll fall off and break your neck." In time, we reached my sister's camp, near a place called Indian Creek. How glad I was to rid myself of that costume. Edwin Alfred Pitt.
I am the editor of the newspaper, the Daily Missouri Republican. A few days ago, to satisfy ourselves of the actual state of affairs at Nauvoo, we visited the city and the surrounding country. It presents a very altered appearance since last fall. Then, the fields were covered with the crops of the season. Now, there are no crops, either growing or being planted. Fences have been destroyed, houses deserted, and the entire aspect of the country is one of extreme desolation. Nearly every workshop in the city has been converted into a wagon-making shop, and every mechanic appears to be employed in the making, repairing, or finishing of wagons or other articles necessary for this trip. In the midst of this scene, in which there is presented an abandonment of homes, breaking up of social relations, sacrifice of property, and the inability to procure the necessary provisions, with an indefinite journey before them of months or years, the spectator cannot fail to be struck with the lightness of heart, apparent cheerfulness, and the sanguine hopes on which families bid adieu to their friends and set forth on their journey. The great masses go forth, sustained and cheered by a devout conviction of the truthfulness of their religion. Their enthusiasm is, stimulated by songs and hymns, in which men, women, and children join singing of the hopes that await them. Editor of the newspaper, the Daily Missouri Republican, March 13th, 1845.
My husband died on the 20th of August, 1846. He sang, "Come, let us anew our journey pursue, roll round with the year and never stand still till the Master appear." He sang that hymn as long as he had the strength to sing it, and then he asked Elisa to sing it. "Oh, that each in the day of his coming may say, I have fought my way through, I have finished the work thou didst give me to do. Oh, that each from his Lord may receive the glad word, well and faithfully done. Enter into my joy and sit down on my throne. Enter into my joy and sit down on my throne." He died without a struggle or a groan. Blessed are the dead that die in the Lord. Yea, saith the Lord. For they do rest from their labors, and their works do follow them. Sarah and Elisa, Levitt.
June the 1st, 1846. My dear family, the temple is finished and dedicated unto the Lord. It is a most splendid building. I am very glad that I am worthy to have a name with the saints of God and to enjoy the privileges that I now do. You may think there is no need of me going from here. The mobs are threatening continually to come upon us. We heard they were coming today, but I have not seen anything. For I believe there is faith enough in the city to keep them back until the saints all get away. We have to make a great sacrifice in order to do so. Most are selling out, although at a very low price. The saints have been going steady since last February and are still going by the hundreds. We expect to start our journey in a few days to the west. And we go as Abraham went, not knowing whether we go. The Lord will go before us and be our front and our rearward. Sally Wynn.
Beloved saints, through our brothers, William Cutler and Daniel H. Wells, we have been apprised of the fact that an armed mob has forced the immediate evacuation of all the remaining saints from Nauvoo. These poor brethren and sisters, widows and orphans, sick and destitute, are now lying on the west bank of the Mississippi, waiting for wagons and teams and means to remove them. Now is the time for labor. Let the fire of the covenant which you made in the house of the Lord burn in your hearts like flame unquenchable, till you have searched out every man that can rise up with his team and go straightway and bring a load of the poor from Nauvoo. For so we covenanted in God's holy house that we would not leave our brothers and sisters behind. This is a day of action. Brigham Young.
My family left in 1849, when there were hardly any horses or oxen to be found. How well I remember what a hard time Father had at breaking in the cows to draw the wagon. They would run off in an opposite direction from where he wanted them to go, or they would run around to the back of the wagon and get all tangled up. For days and days he worked at it. Mother, meanwhile, was praying. Many nights she would go out into the orchard and pour out her soul, asking the Lord to open a way for us. After weeks of hard work, we finally began our journey. Oh, how Mother's countenance beamed with joy. What did she care for hardships if she could only go with the saints? Her faith sustained us on the trail. Our best cow, Bossy, got lame at one time and could scarcely travel. My parents were afraid they could not keep up with the company, and so Mother said she would make a poultice and put it on as soon as Bossy lay down for the night. She made a large plaster that covered all the cow's hips. Well, when Father went to get the cows up the next morning, he called out, "Why, Mother, you've poulticed the wrong hip!" She said, "Never mind, it's all right. It's gone clean through." And sure enough, Bossy limped a very little that day and was soon as well as ever. I know there was a great deal of faith mixed up in that poultice. Margaret Gay Judd Clawson.
I was among the remnant of the sick and dying saints on the western banks of the Mississippi after the expulsion, when we were miraculously fed by quail that alighted in our midst.
It was a direct manifestation of the mercy and goodness of God, a miracle being performed in our camp. A large, or rather several large flocks of quail flew into camp. Some fell on the wagons, some under, some even on the breakfast tables.
They lit on our laps and on everything around. The boys and brethren ran about after them and caught them in their hands. After we had caught enough to eat, they flew towards the west like a swarm of bees.
The men who were not in the church at the time marveled at the sight. The brethren and sisters praised God and glorified his name. That what was showered down upon the children of Israel manifested unto us in our persecution. Thomas Bullock.
And Eliza Clayton Margaret.
And so it was. For those who walked down Parley Street, crossed the Mississippi, and followed God's prophet, the unknown West. The fire of their covenant sustained them through every toil, privation, and trial. For they knew, as we know now and as I know, that God lives. He is our Father in heaven, and his Son is our Savior and Redeemer, even Jesus Christ. He guides us each through his servants as we seek to follow him. With the many saints, our brothers and sisters who walked this road so long ago, we testify that Joseph Smith was a prophet, called of God to restore his church and his gospel in these latter days. And today, we are blessed to be guided by a living prophet of our time, even Russell M. Nelson. And now, I'd like to invite you to ponder the things that you've received today, the stories you've heard, but more importantly, the things you felt. It's just a little bit further down to the water's edge, if you feel so inclined. And when in future days or years, you face your own unknowns, we hope you'll remember Parley Street, and those whose faith made this a trail of hope. Thank you for joining us.